My wife cheated on me with 4 men and her boss. I filmed it and him for $3 million. While I was scanning the restaurant for my client, I unexpectedly saw my ex-wife, Lisa. She was sitting comfortably with a slightly overweight, middle-aged man who appeared to have once been fit but had clearly let himself go over the years. Lisa sat next to him, looking completely content, and everything about this man screamed wealth. As I stood there in the entrance, memories of our past life together came flooding back. Even though 5 years had passed since our divorce, the emotions felt as raw and painful as if it had all happened yesterday. Instead of being by her side, I found myself watching from a distance, merely an observer to her new life, where her desires were met and my troubles had only just begun. It all began with a business trip to Boston for a client meeting. To avoid the tiring drive back, I had planned to stay the night. However, just an hour into the trip, the client called to cancel because of a car accident. Although he was unhurt, he apologized profusely for the inconvenience. I assured him it wasn't a problem and suggested we reschedule. Despite my outward calm, the sudden change in plans left me dreading the 3-hour drive back. Determined to make the best of it, I decided to surprise my wife with a romantic dinner. 2 hours later, I finally turned onto my street, anticipating the evening. What greeted me instead were 4 unfamiliar cars parked in my driveway. Knowing Lisa often invited friends over when I was away, I brushed it off and parked on the street. I entered the house expecting everything to be normal. However, the sight of clothes strewn across the living room floor immediately set off alarm bells. Standing there, a sinking feeling washed over me as I realized that the sounds I heard were not innocent. My wife's moans were unmistakably those of pleasure, not distress. My heart sank as the painful truth hit me. Lisa was cheating on me. Despite my reluctance, I knew I had to face whatever was happening upstairs. As I reached the top of the stairs, I could hear her primal screams. Peeking around the bedroom doorframe, I was met with a sight that turned my stomach. There were 4 men with her, 2 strangers and her boss, James Cooper. They had my wife involved in acts that made my blood boil. My hatred for James intensified as he lavished her with praise, exploiting her for his gain. They treated her like a mere object, using vile language and asserting their dominance over her. Watching this, I felt a mixture of anger and disgust, unable to reconcile this woman with the Lisa I had known for 12 years. Quietly retreating, I slipped downstairs unnoticed and sought refuge in my office. I grabbed my digital video camera, which fortunately still had some battery life and an old holiday cassette inside. My goal was to record this betrayal, not for any agonizing minutes before my emotions got the better of me. While some might find such a scene arousing, it filled me with nothing but sorrow and a deep sense of betrayal. Feeling utterly deflated, I went back downstairs to collect my thoughts. In my office, I retrieved my gun from the safe, flicking off the safety just in case. Though I wasn't prone to violence, the urge to take control of things got out of hand was overwhelming. Returning to the living room, I took the car keys and wallets from the pants discarded on the floor. I then went outside and deflated the tires of all the cars, including Lisa's. A sinister grin spread across my face as I concocted a plan, certain it would succeed. Noticing Lisa's cell phone on the bedside table during my recording, I positioned myself discreetly behind the stairs and dialed her number. After several rings, she finally answered. The silence in the house suggested she had told the others to stay quiet. Lisa seemed out of breath and tried to act normal. She composed herself quickly after my call. I informed her that my client had canceled and that I'd be home soon. The nervousness in her voice was clear. I confirmed I'd be home shortly and hung up, smiling at what was about to unfold. Just as I expected, 4 naked individuals started rushing down the stairs into the living room. The men quickly dressed, and Lisa threw on some clothes as they all scrambled to leave. She slipped on her shoes and jacket, glancing outside, hoping they'd be gone. If she hadn't been so flustered, she might have noticed my car parked on the street. I snuck into the house through a hidden door. The men began shouting at Lisa all at once, causing her to step onto the porch to try and hear them better. At that very moment, I slammed the front door shut and locked it behind her. Lisa caught a glimpse of my face through the window, trying to plead with me, but the time for talking was over. The men came back to the porch, banging on the door and demanding their belongings. Sensing their intentions, I called the police, reporting an attempted break-in. The dispatcher informed me that a neighbor had already called, giving my name and address. The police arrived quickly within just 2 minutes. After questioning Lisa, I approached the officers and informed them that my wife had been mistreated by the men, demanding their arrest. The men immediately protested, claiming they were invited and that everything was consensual. Everyone, including myself, turned to Lisa, waiting for her response. Avoiding eye contact, she admitted in a shameful voice that she had indeed invited the men and participated willingly. The men looked relieved as they avoided any charges. Soon, more police cars arrived, and they took down everyone's information. The senior officer then told me that since my wife had invited these men and they were all adults, there was little they could do legally. He suggested counseling, delivering the advice with a disdainful look at Lisa. I told the police to call a taxi for her, stating she wasn't allowed back in the house that night. One of the men called a taxi after finding their tires flat. They also tried to accuse me of stealing their belongings, but I denied the claims. I turned back to the porch where Lisa remained, waiting for the taxi. I stood there, my eyes burning with anger. Despite my rage, Lisa walked towards me, unaware of my fury and the gun I had on me. She might have run if she had known. I cut her off sharply when she started to speak. I expressed my deep anger and made it clear that I would never forgive her. I used harsh words to describe her and warned her that she would never be allowed to communicate with me directly again. With that, I went back inside, locking the door behind me, leaving her standing outside. She ran back to the group in tears, and James tried to comfort her, but she pushed him away, which oddly gave me some satisfaction. However, that feeling quickly faded. Returning to my bedroom, the lingering smell of lemon only fueled my anger. I tore through the room in a rage, throwing the mattress out onto the lawn. I grabbed my toolbox from the garage and dismantled the bed, tossing its pieces outside as well. Back in the bedroom, I picked up Lisa's phone, scrolling through her contacts and messages. As expected, I found disgusting emails, photos, and videos of her with various men. It was clear she knew them well. I laughed bitterly at my past ignorance, realizing those days were gone. I took all her belongings from the bedroom and dumped them on the front lawn. Moving to the guest room, I found more of her things. While emptying the last drawer, I felt something jammed inside. Angrily, I yanked it open, revealing several DVDs hidden beneath. One of the cases was cracked, but the disc was intact. My heart sank again as I examined the DVDs. I didn't think it could get worse, but it did. I set up everything on a shelf and started watching the first DVD. It showed Lisa with her friend Caroline at Caroline's house, engaging in intimate acts with different people. I watched for hours, tears in my eyes, stopping only at the final 2 discs. The first of the last 2 showed Lisa with her tennis instructor, a service I paid for. She always came home too tired for intimacy after her lessons, which now made sense. The second DVD was the worst Lisa in her office with Eric and his boss, Robert Miller, a man with a great reputation in the community. Seeing this, I felt betrayed on another level. I carefully placed her phone, the DVDs, and the tape I had recorded earlier into a large envelope. I planned to give it all to my lawyer and best friend, Tom Hayes, one of the few people I trusted. Nothing else mattered at that moment. I powered up Lisa's computer and copied every file, email, photo, and video onto external drives. It took an hour, but I was determined. After that, I sat down to go through her digital archives. I found videos similar to those on the DVDs and explicit photos. Digging deeper, I uncovered emails from the past 6 months hidden under misleading file names, revealing even more of her betrayals. I found a series of emails between Lisa, Eric, and several other men, including exchanges with Caroline. I had dismissed them last week, but one particular email nearly broke me. For a brief moment, the thought of using my weapon crossed my mind, but I quickly realized she wasn't worth it. I needed to stay strong. The email that devastated me was from Lisa to Caroline. Caroline had asked why she hadn't left me and to describe her ideal future husband. Lisa's response was brutally honest and cut deep. "Caroline, I am done with Jake. He's faithful but a fool. I'm afraid he's getting close to discovering my double life. He's not entirely clueless, but love blinds him. He's been gaining weight lately, and his growing belly is such a turnoff. Compared to other men, he's lacking. I hate his beard and mustache, they make him look disgusting. I used to love him, but the excitement of the past few years is too good to give up. His lawyer friend could be a problem if he gets involved. Eric and Robert at work are hinting at promotions and perks with suggestive undertones. I find it amusing. I also want a house and a car. If I play my cards right, I could secure alimony every month. I'm looking forward to our Wednesday party once my tennis injury heals. Mike is amazing. Make sure I get last Tuesday's video. It was my first time with so many men. As for my dream man, he must be wealthy, loyal, compliant, and not too bright. He must cater to my every whim without question. I don't care about the bedroom as long as there is money. I laugh because I can get my needs met elsewhere. Sometimes it's just too easy. Damn, Jake's home now. Gotta go. See you Wednesday. Call me. I read this letter over and over, each word more disgusting than the last. The realization that she felt this way about me and that she had been cheating on me for over 2 years was soul-crushing. Was my love so blind? I finally collapsed on the sofa, overwhelmed by exhaustion and emotional pain, and eventually fell asleep. The next morning, plagued by a restless night, I called in sick to work. I reached out to my close friend and lawyer, Tom Hayes. His secretary, Linda, answered. I'd known her almost as long as I'd known Tom. I urgently requested a meeting, but she informed me he'd be in court all day. Linda relayed my message, and Tom told her to schedule me in an hour. If he starts bothering you with nonsense, mention Laura White. That'll grab his attention, she said before hanging up. As I got dressed, my phone rang. Reluctant to speak with Lisa, I checked the caller ID. It was an unknown number, so I answered, suspecting it might be Tom. Mr. Clark, this is Robert Miller from Lisa's office. I'd like to discuss the events from last night at your house. Can we meet today in my office to clarify the situation? Unsure if he knew about the video footage of him with my wife, I realized he was concerned about retaining Eric Bennett's key clients. Lisa and Eric were valuable assets to him, and he didn't want to lose them. Additionally, he was likely worried about negative publicity for his company and himself. Mr. Miller, I have an important meeting this morning, but I'll call you back before noon to arrange something for today, I replied calmly. I made it sound like he was negotiating with me, but he was in for a surprise. As I stepped out, I saw what looked like a bizarre yard sale, the broken bed and Lisa's clothes scattered across the lawn. An elderly neighbor waved, clearly curious. I knew I'd become the talk of the neighborhood. In the city center, I grabbed a bite to eat before heading to Tom's office. Linda made me a cup of coffee, lots of cream, no sugar. We had a long history together. She joked about how Tom had told her to clear his schedule for the day, and if I wanted to know who Laura White was, I'd have to ask him myself. Just then, Tom walked in. He immediately recognized the seriousness of the situation and took me into his office, instructing Linda not to patch any calls through. I recounted the events of the previous night and shared what I had discovered about Lisa's double life. Then I handed him an envelope with the evidence I had gathered. Tom listened attentively, processing everything. I also told him about Robert Miller's request for a meeting. Tom asked if there was any chance for reconciliation with Lisa, but I made it clear that I wanted a divorce and wanted to make her pay for this betrayal. We discussed several options, and I preferred the last one, a direct attack on Lisa's workplace. I had leverage with the video evidence of Bennett, Miller, and Lisa in their boardroom. Tom noted that as Lisa's superiors, they had influenced her actions. Tom warned me to be prepared for serious legal consequences, and that once Robert Miller realized the extent of our evidence, he'd likely push for a settlement. I stated firmly that if the settlement was less than $3 million, it would not be enough. Tom suggested aiming for $3.5 million, joking about my legal bills. He invited me over to his house for dinner that evening, mentioning that his wife, Anna, would make a great meal. I scheduled an appointment with Robert Miller for the afternoon. Just then, Linda popped into the office to inform us that Lisa was on the line. Tom told her he wasn't taking calls, making it clear that he was fully focused on my case. With the meeting scheduled, I left Tom's office feeling a mix of anticipation and dread. I grabbed lunch at a nearby cafe, trying to gather my thoughts. The shock of the past day's events was still raw, and I knew the upcoming confrontation would be intense. At 2 p.m., I walked into the office building where Robert Miller worked. The receptionist led me to his office, a spacious room filled with opulent furniture and framed accolades. Robert sat behind a large mahogany desk, his demeanor betraying the calm he tried to project. "Mr. Clark, I understand we have much to discuss," Robert began. He was trying to sound conciliatory, but I could see the tension in his eyes. "Indeed we do," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Let's cut to the chase. Your employees, Eric Bennett and Lisa, have been involved in activities that not only violate company policy, but also have personal implications for me." Robert nodded, gesturing for me to sit. "I'm aware of the seriousness of the situation. What do you propose?" I handed him the envelope containing the evidence. "This is a small sample of what I have. I expect a settlement that reflects the gravity of their actions and the impact it has had on my life. $3.5 million should suffice." Robert's face paled as he flipped through the documents and photos. I could see him weighing his options, the consequences of fighting this versus settling quickly and quietly. "That's a substantial amount, Mr. Clark. I'll need to discuss this with our legal team and get back to you with an offer. We understand the need for discretion in this matter." I stood up, making it clear the meeting was over. "You have until the end of the week. After that, we go public with everything." Leaving his office, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. Robert Miller was now aware of the storm heading his way. Back in my car, I called Tom to update him on the meeting. He assured me we were on the right track and to be prepared for any counteroffers or attempts to minimize the settlement. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I picked up some groceries and headed home, trying to find some semblance of normalcy in my routine. The house felt emptier than ever, a stark reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my life. Later that evening, I arrived at Tom's house for dinner. His wife, Anna, greeted me warmly, and the familiar comfort of their home was a welcome relief. Over a hearty meal, we discussed the next steps. Tom reiterated the importance of staying strong and focused, reminding me that we had the upper hand. The next few days were tense. I received a call from Robert Miller's office proposing a counteroffer of $2 million. It was less than what we demanded, but still a significant sum. Tom and I discussed it at length, weighing the pros and cons of accepting versus pushing for the full amount. In the end, we decided to hold firm. I instructed Tom to convey our refusal and insist on the original settlement. The following day, Robert Miller called me personally, his tone much less confident than before. He agreed to the $3.5 million, provided we signed a non-disclosure agreement. With the settlement agreed upon, Tom swiftly drew up the paperwork. I signed the documents, feeling a sense of closure beginning to form. It wouldn't heal the emotional scars, but it was a step towards reclaiming my life. The weeks that followed were a period of adjustment. The settlement money allowed me to make changes I had long postponed. I sold the house filled with painful memories and moved to a new city starting fresh. I also took a long vacation, something I hadn't done in years, giving myself time to heal and reflect. Lisa tried to contact me several times, but I ignored her attempts. I had no interest in reopening old wounds. Instead, I focused on rebuilding, on finding peace and strength within myself. The betrayal had been a harsh lesson, but it had also been a catalyst for growth and change. Through it all, Tom remained a steadfast ally, his support invaluable. Our friendship grew stronger, forged in the crucible of this ordeal. As the months passed, I slowly found a new sense of normalcy, a new beginning rising from the ashes of the past. Months had passed since the settlement with Robert Miller, and life began to stabilize. I had moved to a new city, away from the painful memories and constant reminders of Lisa's betrayal. My new home was a modest apartment with a view of the skyline, a fresh start in every sense. During this time, I focused on myself. I joined a gym, started eating healthier, and even picked up some hobbies I had long neglected. Photography became a new passion, allowing me to capture the beauty around me and find solace in creative expression. I spent hours exploring the city, discovering hidden gems and capturing them through my lens. Each photo represented a step forward, a piece of the puzzle in my journey to heal and rebuild. One morning, as I was walking through a local park, my phone rang. It was Tom. He had news about Eric Bennett and Robert Miller. Eric had been let go from the company, and Robert had resigned under the pressure of the scandal. It seemed like justice had finally been served. Hearing this news brought a sense of closure, knowing that those who had wronged me were facing their own consequences. I thanked Tom for the update and for his unwavering support. Our conversation turned to lighter topics, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a genuine sense of happiness. My life was moving forward, and the dark days were beginning to fade into the past. Tom and I planned to meet up soon, a way to celebrate the end of a tumultuous chapter and the beginning of a new one. A few weeks later, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Lisa. I debated whether to read it, unsure if I wanted to reopen old wounds. Curiosity got the better of me, and I unfolded the letter. In it, Lisa apologized for everything. She expressed deep regret for her actions and admitted that she had lost herself in the pursuit of excitement and material gain. She wrote about the pain of losing me and how she had been living in a state of constant guilt. She didn't ask for forgiveness, only that I understand she was trying to change and become a better person. I sat with the letter for a long time, processing her words. It was strange to feel sympathy for someone who had caused me so much pain, but I couldn't ignore the sincerity in her apology. While I wasn't ready to forgive her, I felt a sense of closure. Her words confirmed that moving on was the right decision. As the months turned into a year, I continued to rebuild my life. I made new friends, delved deeper into photography, and even started dating again. The fear and mistrust that had once gripped me slowly began to fade. I was learning to trust again, to open my heart and take risks. One day, while exhibiting my photos at a local art show, I met someone special. Her name was Claire, an artist with a kind smile and an infectious laugh. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love of creativity and adventure. Our connection felt genuine, and for the first time since Lisa, I felt hopeful about the future. Claire and I spent countless hours exploring the city, taking photos and sharing our dreams. She was a breath of fresh air, and her presence brought light into my life. As our relationship grew, I found myself healing in ways I hadn't thought possible. One evening, as we sat on a bench overlooking the river, Claire turned to me and asked about my past. I had been open with her about my previous marriage, but she wanted to know more about the journey that had led me to her. I shared my story, the pain, the betrayal, and the eventual healing. Claire listened intently, her eyes filled with understanding. She told me about her own struggles and how she had overcome them. We realized that our pasts, though painful, had shaped us into the people we were today. Together, we found strength in our shared experiences, knowing that we were stronger because of them.